Family massacres are some of the most chilling and incomprehensible crimes that anyone can imagine. The idea that a person could turn on their own loved ones, the very people they are supposed to protect and cherish, is a dark question about human nature itself. These cases of family massacres leave behind not only devastation and sorrow, but also unanswered questions about what could drive someone to commit such unspeakable acts. Today, we are diving deep into 7 real cases that have shaken the world and made me, and many others, question the very fabric of humanity. 1. The Walker Family Murders, Texas, 1957. In 1957, a quiet suburban neighborhood in Texas was forever changed when the Walker family was brutally murdered. Dr. and Mrs. Walker, along with their 2 children, Betsy and Bobby, were killed in the dead of night, their lives abruptly taken by a lone killer. The murderer was none other than Kenneth McDuff, a man who was known to have a history of violence, but whose connection to the Walker family was chillingly personal. McDuff was working as a yardman for the Walkers, and what was supposed to be a simple task of maintaining the property turned into a bloodbath. After executing the family in their home, he ransacked the house and left, but his crimes didn't stop there. McDuff would go on to commit more heinous murders, but the Walker family massacre remains one of the most horrifying and senseless. The brutality of the attack, combined with McDuff's cold demeanor, makes this case one of the most disturbing and tragic in American criminal history. 2. The Watts Family Tragedy, Colorado, 2018. This next case is one that shook the entire nation and left many people wondering how something so horrifying could happen in a seemingly perfect family. In 2018, Chris Watts, a loving husband and father, committed one of the most gruesome murders of the decade. Watts strangled his pregnant wife, Shannon, and then smothered their 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste, before disposing of their bodies in an oil tank. What made this case even more disturbing was the calm and collected demeanor that Chris Watts displayed during the early stages of the investigation. He appeared to be a grieving father and husband, pleading for the return of his wife and children. It wasn't until he was confronted with evidence and inconsistencies in his story that he finally confessed to the brutal murders. The Watts family massacre not only devastated those who knew them, but also raised the question, how could a seemingly loving father do such a thing? The case highlights the terrifying ability of people to hide their true selves behind a facade. 3. The Clutter Family Murders, Kansas, 1959. The Clutter family murders are infamous for being the subject of Truman Capote's groundbreaking book, In Cold Blood. On November 15, 1959, Herbert Clutter, his wife Bonnie, and their 2 teenage children, Nancy and Kenyon, were killed in their home in Holcomb, Kansas. The murders were committed by Richard Hickok and Perry Smith, 2 ex-convicts who believed the Clutters had a large sum of money in their house. The shocking aspect of this case wasn't just the brutal way the Clutter family was murdered, but the cold and senseless nature of the crime. Hickok and Smith tied up the family, shot them in cold blood, and then ransacked the house, only to find there was no large sum of money. Capote's meticulous documentation of the case brought the story to the public's attention, and it remains one of the most chilling examples of family annihilation. The case raised profound questions about the human capacity for violence and whether people like Hickok and Smith were born killers or shaped by a life of abuse and crime. 4. The Dahmer Family, Wisconsin, 1989. While most people associate Jeffrey Dahmer with his gruesome serial killings, his first victim was his own father, Lionel Dahmer, and his stepmother, Shirley Dahmer. Jeffrey, who had always exhibited bizarre and disturbing behaviors, escalated his violent tendencies when he brutally murdered his stepmother and attempted to kill his father. The Dahmer family massacre, though not widely known, is one of the darkest aspects of Jeffrey's early years. The Dahmer family was plagued with dysfunction, and many close to Jeffrey later claimed that his violent tendencies were triggered by both his abusive upbringing and a lack of familial support. This case forces us to ask difficult questions about the potential influence of familial dysfunction and trauma on an individual's capacity for violence. 5. The Turpin Family, California, 2018. The Turpin family case is a heartbreaking example of prolonged abuse and neglect that ultimately turned into a public family massacre. In January 2018, David and Louise Turpin were arrested after their 13 children were found chained and malnourished in their home in Paris, California. The children were deprived of food, clothing, and education for years, and the parents had created an environment of terror within the home. Though the case did not involve outright killings, the psychological and emotional trauma inflicted on the children led many to call it a form of family massacre because of the profound long-term damage it caused. The arrest of David and Louise Turpin was a long-awaited end to their reign of terror, but it left the world wondering how parents could subject their own children to such horrors. The shocking discovery opened the public's eyes to the reality of child abuse and the lengths some families will go to in order to conceal their suffering. 6. The Bell Family Tragedy, Arkansas, 2010. The Bell Family Massacre remains one of the most tragic events in Arkansas. In 2010, Aaron Bell murdered his wife, Cynthia Bell, and their 3 young children before turning the gun on himself. The horrific event came as a shock to their community, as Aaron was known to have been a devoted father and husband. However, behind closed doors, Aaron had been struggling with mounting pressures, including financial difficulties and personal issues. In a fit of rage, he executed his entire family before taking his own life. The devastating tragedy is a reminder of how unaddressed mental health issues, financial stress, and domestic pressure can lead to catastrophic consequences. It's another sobering example of how people can sometimes snap under pressure and commit unimaginable acts of violence against their loved ones. 7. The McDonald Family Murders, California, 1969. In the 1960s, the McDonald family became victims of one of the most haunting family massacres in American history. Catherine McDonald, her husband Dan, and their 3 children were brutally murdered in their home by a group of people led by Charles Manson. Manson, known for his Manson family cult, believed that a race war was imminent and encouraged his followers to commit murders as part of his delusional plan. The McDonald family was not Manson's intended target, but their brutal deaths were part of a series of murders that shocked the nation. The brutality of the killings and the motivation behind them raised disturbing questions about the influence of a charismatic leader and the devastating consequences of mind control. Manson's actions and the cult he built serve as an unsettling reminder of the dangerous potential of charismatic figures who prey on vulnerable individuals. Family massacres are a tragic and horrifying reality, and these 7 cases are just the tip of the iceberg. Each of these cases raises profound questions about human nature, mental health, and the capacity for violence. How could someone, often someone who is trusted and loved, turn on their own family in such a brutal and senseless manner? While we may never fully understand the reasons behind these horrific acts, one thing is clear. These crimes serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of family bonds and the devastating consequences of unchecked violence and trauma. If you were moved by these stories and want to hear more true crime cases, please make sure to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Graveyard of Evidence for more real-life investigations. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light.